Hey guys, Walls here, and we are all going to get sad together because this is a presentation about the elements of tragedy. Now, we're not talking about tragedy like bad stuff that happens to good people. We're talking about tragedy as a form of literature. And as a form of literature, tragedy originated in ancient Greece over 2,500 years ago. So it's been around for a while. And like I said, it's not just when bad stuff happens to people. The Greek tragedy has a specific form and structure that's based upon specific literary elements and human characteristics. And this presentation is going to cover the specific literary elements that make a Greek tragedy a Greek tragedy. And when we read other tragedies, like we're going to read the tragedy of Julius Caesar, Shakespeare wrote it, wasn't an ancient Greek guy, but he incorporated a lot of the ancient Greek elements of tragedy in his work. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to deal with when we read a tragedy is the tragic hero. He or she is the protagonist, and that person represents the beliefs and values of his or her culture. So they're usually a higher up. They've got a position of power of some sort, but they're not perfect. They're not like Superman or Superwoman or some kind of superhero. It says tragic hero, but they're not super. They're normal. They make mistakes. They don't think. They don't think right sometimes. They just they do dumb stuff, basically. They're not perfect. And so the tragic hero has what's called the hamartia. That's the tragic flaw. So basically, it's the thing that leads to the character's downfall. It's a weakness of character. Something is wrong with the tragic hero, and that is the tragic flaw, whatever that is that we have. So hubris is a little bit different. Hubris is a flaw. Hubris isn't a good thing, but it might not be the tragic flaw. But in a tragedy, we usually see some form of hubris. It's extreme pride or arrogance. And basically, it's what leads the main character, the hero, to overestimate his or her own importance. We all know what that feels like. Sometimes we do it. Sometimes we see people do it. People that kind of overestimate their own importance. They have a too much pride. They're arrogant. That kind of stuff. Now we've got the peripety. This is a reversal of fortune. It's not like the downfall. It's not the big climax, or it's not that kind of thing. But it's a reversal of fortune where everything's going great, and then all of a sudden everything's not going great. It's not the character's fault either. The peripety just comes about because of forces outside of the character's control. So yeah, the character might not be making good choices, or some things might not go down the way they're supposed to, but the reversal of fortune where things go from good to terrible, that's not the character's fault. It just kind of happens. And this leads the character to what's called an anagnorisis. This is when the tragic hero kind of has an aha moment or a duh moment and realizes why things are the way they are, how fate and destiny is playing a role in the world around them. It's kind of like they just have a realization of like, oh, that's why stuff sucks. So the anagnorisis is on the part of the main character, and it comes before the downfall. And this is when the tragic hero experiences ultimate failure. So even though the tragic hero has a lot going for him or her, and maybe some things happen that are outside of the tragic hero's control, the tragic flaw combined with those circumstances beyond the hero's control lead to the ultimate destruction, the ultimate failure of the tragic hero. And the reason that we're supposed to freak out as an audience when this happens is not because we're like, oh, it sucks for you. It's because we see ourselves in the tragic hero. The tragic flaw isn't this thing that only specific people have. We all have a tragic flaw. We all are arrogant. We all are too loyal. We all are, something. We've all got something. And so we can see ourselves in the tragic hero. And when he or she fails, we're like, oh man, I might also fail in that situation. So that's why we get scared or we get upset at the end of a tragedy. And what that leads to is what's called a catharsis. And basically, catharsis is this. We all know who the criers are in our friend group. We're talking the people that when they see something sad or they see something frightening, or they seem to be able to release these emotions at will. I mean, I've got friends that cry during commercials. I may have cried during a commercial, probably. That's a catharsis. It's where you release negative emotions. You're cleansed of these negative emotions based upon what you see or on stage or what you read on the page. And it's basically like the concept of we experience these fears, these sorrows, this pain in a safe place. So we, when we read Julius Caesar, we're going to see acts of betrayal that cause downfall and pain and sorrow. And we know what that feels like. We know what it feels like to have our hearts broken, to be sad, to be fearful. But when we read a play or a book or anything like that, the catharsis is when we experience those emotions, but we're really in a safe place. It's like when you watch a movie and your friend next to you is turning into a puddle because of what's happening on the screen. You're perfectly fine. You're safe. There's nothing wrong. You're sitting in a movie theater. What's happening on screen has nothing to do with you, except you can empathize with the main characters on screen. So you know what it feels like to feel like them, and that makes you sad, and that's why you cry or get sad or angry or scared. That's what catharsis in a nutshell. So we've just covered all of the basic elements of tragedy, and we can find these elements in all kinds of stories. You can find these elements in stories that we've already read that aren't specifically tragic, but we can see examples of a tragic flaw, or we can see examples of a downfall that comes beyond, from circumstances beyond the character's control. So as we move forward, just be on the lookout for elements of tragedy in the stories. Now, here's what I need to see from you to prove that you watched this video. I need to see notes. I need to see bullet-pointed notes, and you need to be remembering.
Landon Elliott, your ride is here.
You need to be remembering the definitions of these words. Okay, so let me catch your notes tomorrow when you come in and get this video watched, and I hope you guys have a good night.